CeeLo killed this shit.
One thing that's worth mentioning is that despite the rather cheap price, the Delta actually comes with a full metal shell. Specifically, it's made of zinc alloy. For this price, I'd say the build is genuinely impressive. The only downside is that the finish is a bit fragile. If you accidentally knock it against something very hard, the coating can chip relatively easily. Looking at the frequency response, the base measurement doesn't actually line up particularly well with what I hear. But let's go through the graph first anyway. From 20 to 100 Hz, the response stays right side against the upper preference bounds. In theory, this means you will get plenty of sub-bass extension along with slightly elevated bass quality, enough to sound full. This bump here is actually caused by the measurement resonance. The response should really look more like this instead. Then from 350 to 800 Hz, the response sits slightly below the preference bounds. In theory, this reduces vocal chest resonance, instrument body, and some of the thickness in the lower mids. That said, the deviation is fairly small, I would say, so it doesn't make this sound hollow or screwed. If anything, the upside is that the vocal become a little more linear and cleaner, trading a bit of warmth and body for a lighter and more agile presentation. Then from 1 to 3000 Hz, the response hugs the lower edge of the preference bounds before rising into the main peak at 3000 Hz. Overall, the upper mids are tuned quite conservatively, so on paper, vocals should sound fairly natural in both position and image size, without feeling especially forward or oversized. Then you'll notice the 5 to 8000 Hz region sits at almost the same level as the 3000 Hz main peak. When this part of the treble is elevated, it generally increases the sense of detail and perceived resolution because it's responsible for things like the edge definition of instrument and the brightness of symbols, and sometimes it leads to harshness and sharpness. So overall, on paper, this should be a tuning with plenty of bass extension and a healthy amount of low-end presence, slightly restrained lower mids that trade some warmth for cleaner presentation, and a fairly energetic treble that emphasizes clarity, detail, and transparency. As for the impedance curve, the rated impedance is 42.6 ohm, the lowest impedance is 42.1 ohm at 20 Hz, while the highest impedance is 44.2 ohm at 2.5 thousand Hz. Overall, it's an exceptionally flat and stable impedance curve. That means it isn't particularly sensitive to source output impedance. In terms of sound, this thing honestly surprised me. It's far better than I expected, at least beyond what I expect at this price. Its defining character is this wonderful and bright, lively sense of excitement. I'll explain where this wonderful feeling comes from. First of all, the soundstage is genuinely impressive. Or more accurately, it's not that the stage is exceptionally wide or exceptionally deep. What really stands out is this sense of space. It surrounds you almost spherical and immersive way, warping the music around you rather than just scratching it left or right. On top of that, the treble is highly transparent and energetic, giving the whole presentation a wonderful, open and refreshing character. Put those two together, it's just fun and refreshing. Then let's break it down. Starting with the bass, notes are on the smaller and tighter side. Impact is reasonably satisfying, but extension doesn't reach particularly deep. It's not so shallow that the bass feels completely flat, but you can definitely tell that once the initial hit is over, there isn't much sub-bass extension or texture lingering underneath. The mid-range is straightforward and slightly cool in tone. Vocals are relatively slim with slightly lower note density, and they are positioned just a bit close to the listener. Puts all of those characters together, vocal ends up sounding very light, agile, and ethereal. Treble leans toward the brighter side overall, with very impressive sense of transparency. What's nice is that this transparency isn't achieved by simply cranking out the brightness or sharpness. Instead, it comes from how clean the presentation is, combined with those light and lively vocals. The whole sound ends up having a very refreshing character. That said, there's a downside with the treble. It doesn't extend particularly high. Considering this is a single dynamic driver, I suspect this is running into the driver bandwidth limits, much like the Mesa Alba, where the response began to roll off a bit early, so you don't get a great deal of that airy ultra-high presentation. Since we're already talking about the downside, I might as well mention a couple of areas where I think this IEM could be improved. The first is something I often notice with single dynamic driver IEMs. The note density is just a little on the lighter side. The second is the timbre. Occasionally, vocals sound as if there's a very tiny veil over them. It's a subtle effect, not enough to make them sound dull or muffled, but occasionally it can sound just a touch less clear than I would like. Anyway, overall, I think the sound far exceeds what you'd expect for this price. I would highly recommend it.